Welcome, welcome. We're going to be interviewing a congressional candidate today. His name is Fuji Shioura. He's running for the 51st Congressional District. Fuji's with us here now. Fuji's running for the 51st Congressional District, and he is a vote to be the change you want. You want others to be. He's also working to create a new there's his website, voteforfuji.com. He's also trying to work to create a new political party called MARIA, Movement for Authentic Immigration Reform Action. There's a little bit on that. And where you can find out a little bit about the MARIA party, mariasoy.com, vote for Fuji. So the two websites you need to know are mariasoy.com, as you can see there, and also voteforfuji.com. Did I get that right?
It's voteforfuji.com, correct.
Today, we had gotten into a conversation earlier, and you had some innovative ideas on your website. For example, here's some of the Maria immigration email, Democrat, Republican. There was a couple other ideas. You can learn more at voteforfuji.com. But you also had some ideas about the International Criminal Court. I think specifically there's a lot of attention on international issues at this moment in America, and you had some ideas about that. Well, first, what is the Maria Party again, real quickly? Why are you running for office? And then we'll get into the ICC.
I was for a long time an independent. Previously, I did run for different elections as a Republican. I did win one election actually as a Placentia Library trustee as a Republican, but unfortunately I was canceled because of my family values. Now, here I am running for Congress as a new founded party of MARIA. MARIA is spelled MARIA, and it's an acronym for Spanish, which stands for in Spanish, Movimiento a Reformar Inmigración Ahora, or loosely translated in English, Movement to Reform Immigration Now, because we are a state of immigrants, literally, if not a nation. And we need humane, practical, reasonable immigration reform. And I think most voters do want immigration reform in some form. Some want it more liberal, some want it more conservative, either or. I do believe the average voter is interested and committed to genuine immigration reform in one form or another. And we are the party to do it and get it done. Because unfortunately, we have Democrats and Republicans in Congress who continually blame each other. And immigration law is a federal matter. Hence, this is why I'm running for Congress. This is why I am proposing a new party called MARIA.
That's wow. So I believe it's also in Spanish. It would be something like Movimiento por, I don't know, authentic, but Imigración Reformación.
As far as I know, Marcus, I am the only one country, as far as I know, with a campaign site entirely bilingual in Spanish and English, with Spanish being a primary language.
I activated the English language for this. That's why it's in English, but it does say right up front when you go to mariasoy.com, you want to see English or Spanish. So absolutely it's there. And everything's in bilingual. So why did you get the idea for the Maria Party, and why is that connected to your run as a 51st Congressional District candidate?
Time and time again, I would work with immigrants and go to immigration court from LA to the holding cells in Otay. And
oh wow!
Again, I saw and witnessed how overloaded, how overwhelmed our immigration courts are, and we needed a sensible resolution, federal laws to reform immigration to make it more streamlined and more fair. And we just don't have that right now. And I saw how good people, innocent people, really got deported. I known students who were born here, American through and through, but maybe a mom, a dad was not. They were in the process of getting their immigration papers and they didn't file on time. And there's many reasons why immigrants don't file on time. Perhaps they had to relocate and move. The cost of living in California, we all know how that is. And sometimes they don't have the right mailing address, but they just moved to a new mailing address and they weren't able to mail such and such a document on time, and hence they got deported. There are so many reasons why we need it. Most importantly, we are around, by some estimates, a state of 40 million people approximately, and around 15 million identify as Latino or Hispanic. So now more than ever, we need to be that third party of 15 million people that truly want genuine immigration reform. And as a third party, we could bring bipartisanship to ensure Republicans and Democrats work together, because now we need a third party to compel the two-party system, which is so antiquated, to really come to terms that they have to be there for the people, by the people, and for the people. And that would not get done by doing business as usual. And Maria is here to do things differently.
Wow. Yeah. Immigration is still an issue. The last time we had serious immigration reform was under President Ronald Reagan. I think that's about 40 years ago, approaching half a century. Barack Obama famously talked about doing it and then backed out at the last minute for loss of political capital that he spent on the healthcare reform, although he had promised Latin people that he would do it. So we don't have any reform at the federal level, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, for approaching about half a century. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely. And every so often we might update some immigration forms here and there, but genuine immigration reform, no, not at all.
Right. And I remember Donald Trump obviously was famously criticized for separating children at the border, but the policy of separating children at the border also got started under Biden and Obama, was continued under Trump, and has been recontinued under Biden. So when we're looking at the two federal parties, Democrat and Republican, they're both okay with separating kids at the border and keeping kids in detention camps. Is that fair?
Absolutely. We've seen an increase of more deportations, and also sometimes it fluctuates between parties. But what doesn't fluctuate is the inaction and the broken system that we have right now, and of course, insecure borders, which I believe is intentional. They do it as a political means to blame one or the other. And I believe that we do need secure borders, but we need it in a humane way. A wall will not work. What we need to is to talk to Mexico. And nothing has been done to that. No federal officer that I know of, and definitely no elected official in Congress has been willing to talk to our neighbor as an equal. And we can have good, logical, reasonable, practical, secure, and safe immigration reform if we just work together with our neighbor to the south, Mexico, and really find a common ground, which we need to do.
To my understanding, the last American administration to work successfully with the Mexican government was George W. Bush, I believe, with Vicente Fox. And they actually brought down the Tijuana drug cartels successfully and reduced illegal immigration. So certainly partnership can work. But, that was in the 2000s, 2005. It's 2023. We're looking at close to 20 years ago. Somebody was willing to work with the Mexicans. So we're not really seeing like a good rep here with America, like no immigration reform in decades, no willingness to work with Mexico in decades. Both parties participating in the worst behaviors towards Latin people. And in California, you're saying, well, the minority is Latin, and maybe they could do better. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, it is. It is. The thing is, California, literally the name should say it all. Right. And me being in San Diego, of course, it does matter. And I believe for a representative democracy to work, we need to represent the people. It's a very simple concept, but hard to accomplish when we have such a powerful one-party state. And
Right.
right now, we might have token political candidates with a Hispanic last name, but not in a real true position of power influenced by the numbers. And the math doesn't add up. With 15 million people that identify as Hispanic in some form or another, we could do a lot better in the court systems, in the county supervisor positions, at the local levels for mayors and city council, and of course at the federal level for Congress.
Right, absolutely. And I would point out that although this is California and we're very progressive and we do have a lot of Latino players, we had the recall election against Governor Newsom, and he survived the recall election. But the moment he did, he criticized Latin voters for not supporting him enough. I've never seen a politician win an election and immediately start trash talking an ethnic group for not backing him. Gavin Newsom did that to Latin voters after the recall election. That doesn't seem like respect to me. The other thing that grabbed me was that no Latino politician in California could criticize the governor. So he's able to slam all Latin people, and yet all these Latin representatives can't say word one on our behalf. By the way, Governor, in democracy, people are able to choose who they vote for. That's called legal and constitutional and the American way. You just criticized all that to one of the newest groups of Americans. Well done, sir. Let's move on to the next topic here. The International Criminal Court. This was the conversation that originally got us started here. Jason Wright, very glad to see Fuji back. We missed you. We last, by the way, met Fuji during the governor's recall debates. Not that I supported the recall of the governor, just that we hosted debates. So let's talk about the International Criminal Court. Why are you interested in this topic now? Why do you think it's a topic that's relevant at this moment? What's going on in the world? What do you think Americans are thinking about? How is this an issue we need to discuss at this moment? Why?
Thank you, Marcus. Well, first of all, unfortunately, we have a very serious situation going on between Israel and the Palestinians. Some call it the Israeli-Gaza war. Some call it the Israeli-Hamas war. I like to call it for what it is, genocide. Let me just put it right out there. It's a Gaza.
Oh, wow.
Let me be very direct and not be political, not be a politician. I call it for what it is, number one. Number two, I believe there's direct responsibility for us as taxpayers, voters, and members of Congress. And now is the time to regain our reputation in international views out there in the world, because we're losing it quickly. And having an International Criminal Court is one mechanism, legal mechanism, to investigate war profiteering and acts of genocide. Because I believe when you're in a position of power, you have a greater responsibility. And right now, with the seriousness of the crimes being committed, not just in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which is an entirely different matter, $8 trillion by some estimates. And now we're doing it all over again with not just Ukraine, but now with Israel and the Palestinians. And I really feel that is in the United States' best interests to invite the idea and have a vigorous legal discussion on how can the United States become a member of the ICC, International Criminal Court, to help me as a future member of Congress investigate, prove, and prosecute anybody that's in Congress that have been profited financially through the wars and committed acts of genocide through conspiracy to aid and abet genocide.
Well, we're going to go through the list of questions, then I have some of my own. Question 2. How do you think ICC membership aligns with American values of justice and accountability?
You know, American justice, I would like to see as impartial, like the statute of Lady Justice with the scales of justice, right? You have to balance the good and the bad. Right now, we have an unequal balance of justice when it comes to international law. And this is very dangerous because the majority of countries, for example, have voted for a ceasefire for Gaza. And yet we, the United States, were the only one to say no to that ceasefire to allow peace and hostages to be released. That is unconscionable. And there needs to be an investigation. There needs to be how to prove it and then to prosecute. And this is why we need to be part of the ICC. We cannot blindly just say, oh, our State Department that is requesting munitions to commit more genocide in Israel will investigate itself. And by the way, they're going to investigate members of Congress if they profited by ill-gotten gains. We simply can't blindly trust our government to do that. It's a conflict of interest, personally. And so this is why it's so essential to have a vigorous civil discussion on how we could have the ICC working together in tandem with members of Congress like myself and others to make sure this does never happen again. Because the ICC was set up ideally in the late 90s to investigate individuals of the most egregious crimes in humanity, the most horrible, not just white collar crimes, but crimes against humanity and genocide and so forth.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, hold on for a second. There you go. What are your views on the role of the ICC in deterring future violations of international law?
I think it has a really good potential, really amazing potential. And I would just first say it is not perfect by any means. Okay, the Rome Statute, it could be better. There's some improvements to be made. By no means. Okay, is it a perfect court? However, for our absence in the International Criminal Court, we are not only weakening the court, we are not doing our moral and ethical responsibility as a superpower. If we want the world to acknowledge us and to respect us as a superpower, we need to step up to the plate, not with bombs and missiles and bullets, but with moral and ethical courage. And one way to do that is by joining the ICC. And the ICC has prosecuted war criminals, has prosecuted people that had committed genocide. So they're on a right track record. Could it be better? Absolutely. And this is why it requires more input and participation from countries like us, like the United States.
Why? How do you propose to address the concerns about national sovereignty in relation to the ICC's jurisdiction?
That's a great question. One concern is more often than not, there is a system in the ICC where they have, I believe it's called the complementarity, or to that effect. What it is more often than not, they will try their best to rely on the local courts to prosecute egregious war crimes like genocide. If they believe that country doesn't have a mechanism or the sincerity to do so, then they will start trying to have jurisdiction. And so here's another important part of that question. For example, what about our service members or members of the United States service? For example, some voters would say, well, would our members of the United States Armed Forces be prosecuted? At the current moment, yes. But if I have anything to say, if the ICC and the United States become members, I will make it my mission to make sure that our past, present, and future members of the United States Armed Forces are not prosecuted. And if there is any testimony by our members of the United States Armed Services, they have full immunity. So that's where I stand on that. Clearly, some people are for it and against it.
Do you want to find a new position away from the dog? You don't have to. No. Okay. I was just wondering for audio. So, anyways, okay. Then question 5: can you elaborate on your position regarding investigating war profiteering and corruption, especially in relation to U.S. officials and legislators?
Yeah. First and foremost, I have to say, by some estimates, They said the Afghan and the Iraq wars was been estimated to be around $8 trillion by some estimates.
Mm.
Some say six, some say eight. Whatever number you choose, it's going to be in the several trillions of dollars. One, we were in Afghanistan for about 20 years. Who's there now? The Taliban. Okay, let's be honest. We lost that war. Okay, Taliban has won. Whatever side of the fence you on politically, that's a fact. Iraq war, we lost. Let's be honest. Okay, we don't control it any more than we have our imagination. We would like to. We do not. We have not won the Iraq war. So, where did the money go? Out of $8,000 billion, is there potential for graft, misappropriations, and theft? And
Yeah.
that's something to think about. And you have the position to vote on a bill to renew munitions for war. And how do I know for the day before you don't own stocks in that company of Raytheon or Northrop or McDonnell Douglas or Boeing? We need to invest where the money went. And did any members of Congress profited from these horrendous wars that cost our finest and best of American soldiers their lives? So many young people have lost their lives in these wars. And as an educator, I find that unacceptable. I mean, you need to investigate it thoroughly. And this is one reason why we need the ICC to come in as outside observers and say, hey, what's going on with this? How much money was here? How many bank accounts are in our country from that country? There is a lot of concern on my part that there's been a tremendous amount of war profiteering with these wars. And a lot of them have been in the members of Congress, and that's where I stand.
1 second. Okay. As a congressional candidate, how do you plan to balance national interests with international legal obligations?
Mm-hmm. Once again, what we have to do is we have to have national security. All national security is being threatened by losing our international good standing in the world. And this is why it's so important to have the ICC involved. Because, for example, with the endless wars we've been going through Afghanistan, Iraq, and now Ukraine, and now the Israeli-Gaza war, we need to understand that wars make our country weaker, not stronger. We are losing our national sovereignty if we have an economic collapse. Okay, we are in very serious straits here, at least here in California, where the cost of living has gone up. The wages haven't caught up. Gasoline prices, food, everything has gone so sky high. And so having national sovereignty is important. But if we lose our economy because we're losing our standing in the world, that's a serious matter, i.e., on another topic, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and South Africa, and other countries joining in January that want to replace the U.S. dollar. Our U.S. dollar is directly threatened. Our U.S. dollar at the moment has some global dominance, but it's losing that seriously. So when our United States dollar loses global dominance, national security, there will be none because we have lost the means to pay for our defense, to pay a way of our living, to pay for our government to function.
What are your thoughts on the principle of universal justice and how it applies to the ICC?
I think the most egregious crimes, such as genocide, has to be embraced. That it's a crime that transcends borders and politics and religion, and we all have to work in a global community to investigate, prove, and prosecute the perpetrators of these crimes, these most egregious crimes. Because now with technology, Genocide is becoming a lot easier. AI is being used in Gaza, for example, and it's just making things a lot worse. And so a lot of these munitions are coming from outside of the state of Israel, from the US, from Europe, and other countries. So this is why we need to have a universal embrace of standards where certain crimes are so egregious, so unacceptable, we will not allow it. Just like in BC, nuclear, biological, or chemical weapons. Okay, we have to say no. We cannot use those on the battlefield because they're so egregious. Okay, most modern countries will accept readily, openly, that nuclear, biological, or chemical weapons should never be used. That's not to say they're not being used, but at the very least, a majority of countries in the international community believe in that as they should. And so universal justice to investigate, prove, and prosecute the most egregious crimes is necessary.
How do you perceive the ICC's role in strengthening global rule of law and promoting, I guess, global human rights?
I do believe it has potential. Once again, the US is not a member of the ICC. So it's very hard to say how they're going to have a global jurisdiction, is what I believe you're asking. Global jurisdiction could happen if more countries join the ICC, but this could only happen if we, the United States, as a leader, and can become a member of ICC to show other countries that yes, we hold you accountable and we will hold ourselves accountable. Why should other countries join the ICC when we, the US, say, well, we want you to be prosecuted by the ICC, but we won't join? We want the ICC to prosecute Vladimir Putin of Russia, but we don't want to be a member of the ICC.
Yeah. What specifics, Ted? What specifically would you do as a member of Congress? You won the election, you're in Congress. What are you going to do, the action steps that you can promise the voters you would take to ensure that America joins the ICC?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I'll reach out to other members of Congress that feel like minded, that really want to explore and debate how we could join the ICC. And then we will have town hall discussions with our voter base, with our constituents, and explain to them why we should join. What are the limitations and what protections we have on national sovereignty, such as the one I propose, protecting our members in the United States Armed Services from prosecution, past, present, and future, by the way. Then, after I get enough support in the Congress, House of Representatives primarily, then we'll seek out support in the U.S. Senate. And once we get hopefully more support in Congress, that's when we start to petition the president, whoever that may be, up to the voters. We will see in November 2024, and really say, look, we need the State Department to work with us, because clearly we could vote on a lot of resolutions and get this proposal out there. But ultimately, it's really important for the executive branch, the next U.S. president, to work with us and to encourage and compel their future Secretary of State to reach out their contacts and ambassadors to let them know that we're planning to join. So it will be a lengthy process. I do believe it could easily take 2-4 years to have full membership to convince enough members of Congress. But I feel confident that if we reach out together, Republican, Democrat, Independents, Maria Party, to voters and say this transcends political identity, political preferences. We want you to really contact your representative, your senator, to work with us. And that's how it's going to be possible. I will make sure that every week, every day while I am in Congress, I will have a dedicated mission of reaching out across the aisle, Republican or Democrat or Independent or Libertarian or Green Party, to make sure we have a consensus of lawmakers to try.
There you are. Okay. Well, that was pretty good. We got through all the questions. So now I have to ask you some of the tougher questions. This is a map of the International Criminal Court. In green is everybody who's agreed to it. In yellow are countries who've signed but haven't fully ratified. Purple, there's not many. We'll wait to get Fuji back. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. 1 second.
Okay. So I'll just continue to explain. Orange is the category America's in, where they signed it and then backed out. And then red is where they said, I'm not signing that at all. When you look at this map, America's in league with Russia and Sudan, some of the not greatest human rights people.
Yeah.
Not necessarily great company. I mean, Sudan committed a genocide. Russia invaded Ukraine, and then America's in league with these two people. Basically, we're the only other group that's like, oh, I was willing to sign and then back away. If you look at the people who didn't sign it, which were basically relegated to the same category as, we're looking at places like Libya, China, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Belarus, Turkmenistan, really outstanding regimes that support democracy. So this is not a good look for America. Would you agree?
That is horrid. Yeah, I agree. Once again, we have to be the leaders to join. We need to join so we can set an example for the others.
Right. I found it interesting that America would say that they uphold the international rules-based order, specifically against China and Russia over the last decade, and yet they won't actually join the international rules-based order themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, the Ukraine war. The U.S. wants ICC to prosecute Putin because of the Ukraine war, but we're not a member.
Right.
So how we don't have any more authority. We lost it in that instance. So we need to be the leader to show other countries like China and India to join us. But we have to set the example. We have to be the leaders. And I know America, we are a great country. We are so special and diverse. And that's why I'm running for Congress, because the current makeup of Congress does not represent the majority of Americans. For example, the majority of Americans want a ceasefire for peace to prevail, for the hostages to be released, and for people to live in peace on both sides, for Israel and the Palestinians. That's the majority of Americans. But that's not being represented in the chambers of Congress.
True.
And I believe the vast majority of Americans want ICC membership. If we could explain to them what are the responsibilities, what are the limitations, and why should we join? What is the benefit to us as a country?
Sure, but let's get into the tough questions here.
Okay.
We have to prosecute the most egregious perpetrators of these genocidal crimes, but we will not prosecute anybody in the military, past or present. Mm-hmm. How is that not a contradiction?
Great question. I believe because we are a superpower, number one. Number two, I put that clause there specifically. I am proud to be an ardent supporter of our brave women and men in the armed forces. And this would also encourage whistleblowers to come forward, because I truly believe there's a sufficient amount of people in our military. They're good, fine, decent human beings serving and protecting us every single day, that they know something's not right with our elected officials, that they are profiteering, they are committing acts of genocide, and this will give them immunity above and beyond to encourage to come forward with information. And will also make sure our military retains its reputation, that we will abide by the rules of war, even when all politicians compel them and dictate them to do otherwise. And let's not forget, unlike other militaries in other countries, the U.S. military is strictly civilian-led. They take orders strictly from elected civilian leaders.
Sure.
So there's the difference. Okay, we're not a dictatorship yet. Hopefully, never. Um, you know, but as of now, our brave women and men are under a civilian control. That means members of Congress declare war, U.S. presidents go to war without consent of Congress. Many times I've seen Iraq, Afghanistan, for example,
Right.
and now Israel, and now Ukraine. Um, so we really have to be very specific when we apply these war crimes, because to thoroughly investigate and prove and prosecute the majority of American voters, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green Party,
Sure.
Libertarian, Maria Party, would feel, yes, okay, that's a select group of people we could investigate because they are truly in the position of power, of influence.
That's fair.
And there's sympathy for our US military, women and men and sons and daughters, that perhaps this will sway American voters to compel their elected officials, representatives, and senators to vote for membership for the ICC.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It does seem a little bit difficult to say that we're going to show people that we're upholding the law, and yet the people who actually physically broke the law are completely immune. Now, I get
Understand?
it.
Yeah.
We're a democratic thing, as I've always said, no soldier, no Marine, no sailor, no airman joins the service and says, can you guys start a war in Hawaii or Yemen? Because I feel that would be good. You are told where to go. You are told what to do. You don't have choices. So I get how the actual decision making is by the political leaders at the top, but also some high-ranking generals. If we do this, how do we know that other countries won't follow this? For example, in Ukraine, there was the Bucha massacre. Now, as I understand, that wasn't ordered by Putin. That was by his officers on the ground. That's being considered.
Srebrenica in Yugoslavia, and Serbia, and Bosnia in the 90s.
So
it goes on. Absolutely.
Those guys get completely free.
Yes, and this is something very difficult for people to accept. The Nuremberg trials, for example.
Yeah, all those guys are free.
This is, once again, this is why we have to have this discussion to continue. This is where I stand as a candidate running for Congress to serve and protect our greatest and finest, America's finest. Those are the women and men in our U.S. Armed Forces services. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Space Force, and other services.
That's right.
That's where I stand. As for other candidates, I would like to know, but I do believe it's their responsibility to come forward to say, yes, America should join the ICC, or no. And if they want reservations or improvements, to make proposals. But once again, joining the ICC will come with a tremendous amount of effort. Because there will be people for and against my proposals, such as protecting our brave women and men in the armed services, past, present, and future, from prosecution.
Are you concerned at all that this style of joining the ICC may be copied by other regimes, North Korea, Iran, China,
right? It could be that's a chance we have to take. But I do believe inaction is unacceptable.
It certainly is not a good look. I don't know how you can say you uphold the international based order and not join this organization.
I could totally understand that opinion. I completely understand that opinion. But inaction, so far,
there are a lot of war crimes here for America in Afghanistan. The Maiwan district murders, the Kandahar massacre. In Iraq, you can go to Abu Ghraib. You can go to Al Mahmadiyya massacre, the Hamdaniya incident, the Haditha massacre, and the Nusra Square massacre. All those would be excused. We would just be going after the elected officials like George W. Bush, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, who actually made the decision to put those young men in that situation where they may not react well to extreme stress and pressure.
Yes, that is correct.
I just want to point out one last thing we looked up was that in the ICC, when they prosecute genocide, they prosecuted Milosevic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they also prosecuted Mladic,
Yes, they did.
who was a general.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason and this is interesting because we're talking about the Israel-Gaza situation. So Mladic was prosecuted by the International Criminal Court for genocide. The specific thing they prosecuted him for was surrounding the city of Sarajevo, shutting off all traffic in and out, as well as water and electricity,
Mm-hmm.
and then bombing it and shooting the people inside. That's literally what's going on with Gaza.
Yes. And I will say this for the viewers watching, and this is for the next episode. So the viewers have to stay tuned.
Yeah.
And genocide is a serious, horrendous matter. Should American citizens who went and served in the uniform of the IDF, Israeli Defense Force, if found guilty of genocide, should they be prosecuted by the ICC? Even though Israel is not a member of the ICC, but if the U.S. becomes a member of the ICC and the U.S. citizen has dual citizenship, but yet served in the Israeli military to commit genocide, should we prosecute them? And if it's proven, to prosecute them for genocide?
That's interesting. I'm not sure on the rules on that. They might be able to say, well, for prosecution, I choose to be an Israeli citizen, and they don't recognize the court.
Well,
or they could
that
say,
has to be,
yeah.
This is something that I think we have to go in depth in the next interview.
It is interesting because the idea of dual citizenship is not very common. It's only found in a few places, and America only allows that for very few select countries. So it's very rare to be in that unique legal situation.
It is, but when you become a dual citizen of another country and you take up arms and we investigate and prove a war crime has been committed by you, we have to have a deterrent that this doesn't happen again. That what's happening, the Gaza genocide is real for me as a candidate for Congress, and it's my job to make sure it never happens again. One way to do that is to prosecute, if proven guilty, the members of Congress that facilitated, aided, and abetted this Gaza genocide.
There you go. We'll bring you back for part 2, go more in depth. That was really good. This is hard hitting. These are very strong subjects. Give me 1 second to pull the picture up. I will say that you're very bold. You're very brave. This is an issue that's been there for a while. A lot of politicians won't even bother to touch it because it's so thorny. Most people won't even bother to take a stance because it's difficult. And right when things are the most controversial and most heated, you take a stance. I have to say that's what we used to call leadership when I was a younger man. And congratulations to you. We'll have you back for more. And again, for everybody, you can find out more at voteforfuji.com. That's Vote for Fuji. Or if you want to find out about the new Maria Party, you can go to Maria Soy. That's mariasoy.com and learn about the Movimiento for Immigration Reformación. And there it is. There's the information. You can find out more about this candidate who's challenging old ideas, new ideas, pioneering new thinking, and jumping into some of the most thorny and controversial issues, which I consider political leadership myself. You don't necessarily have to agree with the ideas, but I think this is what democracy is. It's about elected officials or potential elected officials coming from the citizenry and continuing this discussion of us as voters on what are the right solutions. So we'll leave it there. Thanks for coming out, and I'll send you a copy of the video soon. I'll say
thank you.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon.